What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT, coming to you with a brand new setup. If you're listening to this on Apple and Spotify, then you can't see it. But if you're listening to this on YouTube right now, then you can see that we switched some things around. And a little bit of backstory for what prompted me to change the setup. If you don't care about this, we got timestamps in the description. You can skip to the start of the episode. But I've always been really good at public speaking. I've never had a problem with communicating to large crowds of people. I don't get nervous speaking in public. But when I get on here to record and it's just me talking to myself in front of the camera, I'm not able to articulate myself as well as what I am off camera. And I've tried a bunch of different strategies to improve this, but nothing really has changed. So I figured by changing the setup, it would better allow me to feel more relaxed, more comfortable. Because when you get on YouTube, sometimes there is a little bit of pressure that you put on yourself to make sure that you pronounce words the right way, because if you mispronounce a player's name or you mispronounce a team, then people in the comment section are quick to let you know about it. And if you're a content creator, then you know that sometimes when you're recording a video, you may do 2 or 3 takes because the intro didn't roll off the tongue the right way. And I just felt it was better if I just switched my setup around. With the current setup I have right now, I just feel more relaxed. I don't feel as much pressure as what I did sitting upright. And they say when you sit upright, it allows you to think better. But just sitting like this is where I just feel the most relaxed. So the setup has changed. I know the wall behind me looks a little bit boring. I don't have anything but the JT Sports logo lit up behind me, but we're going to add some more decor to this wall over the next couple of weeks. But Cam Heyward is at odds with the Steelers right now. He is threatening to sit out this season if they don't give him a salary increase. Now, last year, before the 2024 season started, he agreed to a 2-year extension worth $29 million, $14.5 million per season. But after he signed on a dotted line and the ink dried up on it, he told the Steelers front office that if he had another all-pro season, which he did, then he'll be right back looking for more money. Cam Heyward has the Steelers in a really tough situation right now for 2 reasons. One, he's 35 years old. And if you give Cam Heyward a pay increase, which right now he's currently the 35th highest paid defensive lineman in the game, he's making less money per year than Chase Young. If you give him a salary increase to where he becomes top 6, top 5 highest paid at his position, you risk the chance of him falling off because he is 35 years old and eventually Father Time is going to catch up to him, and you don't want to end up paying a boatload of money to a guy that's not going to be able to play at the level you expect for the money you would be paying him if you do bump up his salary. The second issue that the Steelers have is you have a 40-year-old quarterback that has already let it be known that this is going to be his final season, which means that the Steelers are all in on trying to win this year. If they're going to win a Super Bowl, which is what the feeling is within the building, they have the ability to do that with Aaron Rodgers, then you got to put the best team on the field possible, and that includes having Cam Heyward on the field for you this year. This isn't one of those situations where you can just say Cam Heyward kick rocks, because without Cam Heyward, the Steelers' defense isn't as good as what it is with him being in the lineup. Cam Heyward, say what you want to about his age, from a production standpoint, he still is top 5 at his position. He's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the game, and him being a first-team All-Pro supports that. So Cam Heyward is justified to ask for a pay increase. When you outperform expectations, you outperform your contract, you have the right to ask for more money. But if you are saying that Cam Heyward should play out his contract, he already signed on the dotted line, it is what it is, you're not wrong. And I agree with you. But the problem is the NFL is a production-based business. You don't get paid off what could happen. You get paid based off what you've already done. And what Cam Heyward did last season was be a first-team All-Pro. So you can't use Madden logic and say he's old, he's 35 years old, the Steelers can't pay him at all. You have to pay him based off what you have seen out of him recently. The NFL is what have you done for me lately business. You don't get paid based off what you will be. You get paid off what you are right now. Cam Heyward, you can't make an argument against him and not agree that he still is one of the best at his position and he deserves to get paid as such. You can't use age or Madden logic against Cam Heyward because in Madden, when a guy turns 30, they automatically regress. Cam Heyward, however, has played his best football since he turned 30 years old, which is something that you don't really see happen all that often. Normally, when players turn 30, that's the cliff that they start to fall off because they exit the peak of their physical prime. So not only do they start to diminish physically, but the production also starts to diminish. But Cam Heyward has done the complete opposite. His production has increased with the older he has seemed to get. And it seems as if Father Time isn't catching up to him anytime soon. So you can't use the Madden logic that Cam Heyward is too old to get paid the money that he's asking for, because you don't get paid based off your age. You get paid based on your production. Hall of Fame level players, what separates them from everybody else is that they can sustain an elite level of play a lot longer than what you normally see the average NFL player have. Emmitt Smith, Jerry Rice played well into their late 30s and was still putting up Pro Bowl caliber numbers. Tom Brady played until he damn near was 90 years old. Cam Heyward is a future Hall of Famer. And with him being a Hall of Fame level talent, he's going to be able to maintain a high all-pro level of play a lot longer than what you see for the average player. Now, eventually he is going to fall off, but with the Steelers being all in on this season, you can't worry about the next 2 years. You got to worry about right now, because when you have a 40-year-old quarterback, you should be trying to win as many games as what you can with him being on the tail end of his career. So Aaron Rodgers puts more pressure on the Steelers to get this pay increase done with Cam Heyward. He puts more pressure on the organization to cave to Cam Heyward's demands because this is a team that is all in. Now, if the Steelers had Justin Fields or let's say Will Howard was starting at quarterback this year, then the Steelers could tell Cam Heyward to kick rocks. Either you play, you retire, or retrade you somewhere else. They can't do that, though, because they need Cam Heyward. He gives this team the best chance to win when he's on that field. And despite the Steelers using a first-round pick on his future replacement, there's no guarantee that that first-round pick that they drafted out of Oregon is immediately going to come in and be a first-team All-Pro like Cam Heyward. Based off what we've seen out of Cam Heyward last year, we know that he is still top 5 at his position. The other argument against Cam Heyward getting paid that I've heard is he's already made millions. Why does he need to get any more? He should be happy with what he's already gotten. You can't play football all your life. And football is one of the few professions that allows you to get paid millions, get paid generational kind of money for the simplicity of playing a sport that revolves around throwing around the ball for 3 hours every Sunday. Playing football isn't as difficult as being a doctor, a lawyer, a firefighter, or a teacher. So when you can't get millions of dollars every year playing such a simplistic sport, then you're going to try to milk every single penny that you can until you retire. Have you never heard the Lil Wayne song when he said too much money ain't enough money? I mean, yeah, Cam Heyward already has enough money that has set his family great for generations, but why would he leave any money on the table? It's not like he's getting a bunch of endorsements. He's a defensive lineman. He's not somebody that people are actively seeking out to do endorsements or brand deals with. And if you was in his shoes, you would do the same thing. The NFL stands for not for long. As soon as a player falls off, you're expendable. Nobody cares about loyalty. Nobody cares about how much blood, sweat, and tears you put into the organization. Once you fall off, you're cooked. And either you get forced to retire against your own will because the team wants to cut you and you might not want to play for anybody else, like how the Steelers did Troy Polamalu, or you continue to play well and you retire on your own terms like Cam Heyward has the ability to do if he can sustain the level of play that he had last year. And he's been relatively healthy despite the old age that he currently is at right now. He has played in 17 games for 3 out of his last 4 seasons. Only in 2023 did he not play in every single regular season game. So he's healthy. He's consistently elite. The Steelers have no choice but to pay him if they truly are all in on winning this season. If you don't want the starting quarterback of your favorite team to play like Anthony Richardson, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, check us out, JT Sports, on all podcasting platforms. Give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. Let's get back to the video. With how Shedeur Sanders balled out in the Browns' first preseason game against the Panthers, you would have expected for the Browns to bump him up on the depth chart. However, going into their second preseason game against the Eagles, the Browns still have Shedeur Sanders trapped in the doghouse. He still is quarterback 4 on the depth chart. At this point, the NFLPA needs to step in and they need to launch an investigation against the Browns for colluding against Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur has been the best quarterback on the Browns roster all throughout training camp. He leads the team in touchdowns, completion percentage, and he has committed the least amount of turnovers. With how well he played in that preseason game last week, he showed that he should have been drafted a lot higher than where the Browns were able to luck up and get him at. But the issue with Shedeur Sanders is he's trying to fight against the Browns' politics. You see, these coaches, these front office executives, they have big egos. They don't like looking wrong. And the Browns are still refusing to admit that Shedeur Sanders is better than Dillon Gabriel solely because of where they took Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel has been the worst quarterback throughout this point in training camp. And the Browns taking him over Shedeur Sanders was already outrageously idiotic. There was nothing about Dillon Gabriel that screamed franchise quarterback. At his best, he's a good bridge start quarterback for you. He's a guy that can win you a few games, get you by for a season until you find your long-term answer at quarterback in the draft. But at best Dylan Gabriel, if he reaches his potential, he's like a bottom 25 quarterback in the league. Shedeur Sanders has more upside than what Dylan Gabriel has. He's a better athlete. He has a stronger arm. That's another thing about why the Dylan Gabriel selection was weird by the Browns. Dylan Gabriel, he doesn't have the right skill set to win in the kind of conditions that the Browns are going to be playing in for the majority of this season. Once you get into early October and the weather starts to change, it gets really cold, it starts to snow, Dylan Gabriel becomes ineffective because he has a weak arm. He's not a great athlete. He's not that big. So the Browns offense will get limited if they have to rely on Dylan Gabriel to start for them as compared to Shedeur, who doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but he has a way more stronger arm than what Dylan Gabriel has. And Shedeur Sanders has proven throughout training camp and throughout early during this preseason that he by far clears Dylan Gabriel. But the Browns can't admit that, though. They still have to try to justify that Dylan Gabriel was worth being drafted over Shedeur, even though the results tell us otherwise. And the Browns politicking is the prime reason why they've been one of the worst franchises in all of sports for over 2 decades. Because bad organizations, what they do, instead of starting the best players, the most talented players, they start guys because of where they were drafted. They start guys because of favoritism. They start guys because of politics. And that's what the Browns are currently doing right now with their quarterback battle. Instead of admitting that Shedeur is the best quarterback on the team, they got to try to justify trading for Kenny Pickett, who's been nothing more but a backup quarterback in this stage of his career. They got to justify trading for a sub 6-foot quarterback with a noodle arm. Dylan Gabriel is the diet version of Tua Tagovailoa. You know how they have Coke and then you have Diet Coke? Or when you go to Walmart and you have Fruit Loops on one side and right next to it you have the Great Value brand Fruit Loops. Dylan Gabriel is like going to Walmart, buying past the real Fruit Loops, picking up the Great Value brand Fruit Loops, and the Browns are choosing Great Value brand Fruit Loops over the real official Fruit Loops and Shedeur Sanders. We know that the Great Value Fruit Loops don't taste as good as the real Fruit Loops, but the Browns want to try to justify that the Great Value brand Fruit Loops taste better than the actual Fruit Loops. Shedeur is the Fruit Loops. Dylan Gabriel is the Great Value brand Fruit Loops. But the Browns, for some reason, they like how the Great Value brand Fruit Loops taste more than the actual Fruit Loops. Jimmy Haslam has made a lot of mistakes. He drafted Johnny Manziel. He signed off on giving Diddy Deshaun $230 million fully guaranteed. And now he's been blessed to correct all of the misses that he has had at quarterback with Shedeur Sanders, but yet he wants to ignore the blessing. Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, they want to ignore the blessing that Shedeur Sanders is, all for the sake of trying to pump up their egos and try to justify that Dylan Gabriel has the ability to be something that he never will be, which is a franchise quarterback. There was an article that came out a week and a half after the NFL draft. Anonymous college coaches that played against Shedeur Sanders were asked about his draft slide and how good they believed that he would be in the NFL. And all of them said that they were shocked that he fell as far as what he did. And they also, most of them said that he should be a solid quarterback in the league. Now, most of them agreed that he wouldn't be an elite quarterback, but they viewed him around the realm of a Kirk Cousins and a Dak Prescott, which if the Browns can get a Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins kind of career out of Shedeur Sanders, that's great considering how atrocious their quarterback play has been over the last 2 decades. If you give Shedeur Sanders a good enough team, he can win you a Super Bowl. But for some reason, though, the Browns want to collude against Shedeur. They want to try to justify their bad decision-making. I mean, not only did they draft Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round, but they drafted Quinshon Judkins in the 2nd over Travion Henderson. And Quinshon Judkins, with the legal situation that he's in right now, he might not even play a single down in the NFL. So the Browns have already whiffed on 2 draft picks, Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Gabriel, but they don't want to take the L with Dylan Gabriel yet, so they got to try to prop him up over Shedeur. We all know that Shedeur Sanders has been the best quarterback on this Browns team. The numbers don't lie. You look at that quarterback tracker after every training camp session, Shedeur is always the most consistent. He's always the guy taking care of the football. He's always the guy being the most efficient despite the lack of snaps and the lack of opportunities that he has received, and he hasn't made any excuses. He's rose to the occasion. He rose to the occasion last week against the Panthers. He threw 2 touchdowns, no turnovers, looked perfect despite playing with guys that he didn't have a lot of chemistry with, no timing at all with, and still made it work. But the Browns, they look at how well Shedeur Sanders played against the Panthers last week, and they say, cool, we don't care. You're still quarterback 4. This is collusion. The NFLPA needs to get involved. Training camp and the preseason has showed us that Shedeur is the best quarterback on this damn team. So it makes no damn sense why the Browns continue to keep Shedeur Sanders in the freaking doghouse. Now, you can say that Shedeur should ask for a trade, which would make sense in this situation, but who's going to trade for Shedeur? A lot of the teams that need Shedeur right now, they passed on him in the draft. Their minds aren't going to change over 2-3 months. They still are going to feel the same way about Shedeur as what they did during the draft. The only teams that would trade for Shedeur are the ones that already have solid quarterback play. Shedeur's best opportunity to start is with the Browns, believe it or not. So he kind of has no choice but to ride this situation out, as effed up as what it is and as stupid as what it currently is also. Right now, the Bills, the Ravens, and the Chiefs are believed to be the only 3 teams that can win the Super Bowl out of the AFC. But the Denver Broncos have a very good shot of being able to insert themselves into that Super Bowl conversation. Last year, the Broncos, by far, were the biggest surprise in the NFL last season. Based off their preseason projected win total of 5.5, they were expected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL and pick top 5 in this past year's NFL draft, but they overachieved, 1, due to the brilliance of Sean Payton, 2, because they had an outstanding defense, and 3, Bo Nix had one of the greatest rookie seasons in NFL history statistically, but it got overlooked due to how good Jaden Daniels was and how far he was able to take the Commanders in the postseason. This season, however, though, with Bo Nix going into year 2 as the Broncos starting quarterback in his 2nd season in this Sean Payton system, he has the ability to win MVP this year. We've seen guys like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson win NFL MVP in their 2nd years. Bo Nix could follow down that same path. He already proved that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He might not be top 10 in a lot of you guys' opinion, but to me, he's within that 12 to 11 range. Great athlete, throws the ball with superb accuracy. There were moments when you watch Bo Nix play during his rookie season and you're thinking to yourself, I'm watching a more athletic version of Drew Brees. With the Broncos possibly getting MVP level play out of Bo Nix, with them having an elite defense and a defense that was third in points per game allowed last season, that adds two all-pro level players in Talanoa Hufanga and linebacker Drain Greenlaw, this is a defense that could be the best in the NFL this season. Let's not forget they have the reigning defensive player of the year and Patrick Surtain as well. They're good on the line of scrimmage, which is what every team needs in order to win the Super Bowl. They have a great offensive line, a great defensive line. They have a tenacious pass rush. Nick Bonito was coming off a breakout season last year. You got great quarterback play. You got a great head coach that's really good at managing the clock. He's good in late game situations. Why can't the Denver Broncos be in the Super Bowl conversation with the likes of the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Ravens? Because they have the personnel to compete with any of those teams. I know that the pushback against that is going to be, we saw them get obliterated by the Bills in the wild card round, but that was with a rookie quarterback. With Bo Nix in year 2, he'll be a lot better in a playoff game like that against the Buffalo Bills. When you are a rookie quarterback and you're going up against that Bills defense, everything is just a blur. And playoff football is difficult for any quarterback, especially a guy like Bo Nix, who wasn't even supposed to be as good as what he was, according to all of the analysts and the draft experts out there. Sean Payton is the sole reason why I believe that Bo Nix would be as good as what he was last season. Sean Payton is the most overhated head coach in the NFL right now. Before last season, after he had the ugly separation with Russell Wilson, he was villainized by the media within NFL circles, but he was proven to be right about everything because Bo Nix outplayed Russell Wilson. Remember when he had those comments about Nathaniel Hackett not knowing what the hell he was doing as a play caller? Well, Nathaniel Hackett, when he was calling plays with his buddy Aaron Rodgers with the Jets, that offense was atrocity. And Sean Payton had Bo Nix balling out. He was able to change his scheme and his play calling around Bo Nix to help him develop, of course, the way of his rookie season. So now with Bo Nix entering year 2 under Sean Payton is going to be able to throw a little bit more at Bo Nix that he's going to be able to handle that he couldn't handle in his first season. There's a lot to like about the Denver Broncos as far as this team being able to compete for the Super Bowl. And they already had a bunch of close games with some of the better teams in the league. Hell, they came a blocked field goal away from beating the Chiefs last season. They were already scarily good last year. They were ahead of schedule. Now, they could be ahead of schedule when it comes to inserting themselves in that Super Bowl bubble. They could be ahead of schedule when it comes to becoming a Super Bowl contender. Now, although the NFL is better than the NBA, there is something that the NFL owners can take from the NBA, which is their lack of patience. And the NBA, they just fire coaches so randomly at such a high rate. It just gets too much to keep up with at times. I mean, the New York Knicks fired Tom Thibodeau. And if you don't know much about the NBA, you don't follow it, Tom Thibodeau had the Knicks one game shy of making it to the NBA Finals. Essentially, he got fired after leading the Knicks to the NBA's equivalent of what is the conference championship game in the NFL. In the NFL, however, we have guys like Sean McDermott, John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin that routinely underachieve in the postseason and still are able to keep their jobs due to the belief that you could do a lot worse. And the risk doesn't outweigh the reward when it comes to firing those guys. You have a lot of teams that are stuck and complacency with what they currently are, instead of teams going out there like how they are in the NBA, being on the aggressive, firing coaches that they believe aren't good enough to get it done in the playoffs. And I propose that the NFL owners start taking the similar approach that NBA owners do when it comes to having a short leash with patience with their head coaches, because when it comes to a coach like a Sean McDermott, how much longer are you going to wait until you realize that he has peaked as the Bills head coach? How many more years are the Bills going to continue to lose to Kansas City in the playoffs? How many years is Sean McDermott's defense going to continue to get exposed by Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes? Because Sean McDermott is a defensive-minded coach, but yet his defenses never show up when it's time to stop Patrick Mahomes. How much longer are the Bills going to keep putting up with this? When are they going to admit that Sean McDermott might not be the right guy to get them over the hump? Now, you can push back against that and say, well, you can do a lot worse than Sean McDermott. You absolutely can. You can do a lot worse than Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. These are three proven winners, and these are three coaches that are always going to have you in the playoffs, and they are always going to have you thinking that you can win a Super Bowl. But that's the problem. You think that you can win a Super Bowl with these coaches. You've won a Super Bowl with John Harbaugh in the past, but he hasn't come close to winning one again since. Eventually, the NFL is going to have to be less patient with these head coaches as they are when it comes to young quarterbacks. If you want to know why young quarterbacks don't get as much time to develop as what they used to, it's because coaches only have 3 years to turn the team around. And once you get to that third year, if you don't have your team in the playoffs, you get the pink slip. In the NBA, they fire these coaches left and right, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But you can't fault them for taking the swing, for not being okay with continuing to get the same old results year after year after year. Do you guys remember when the Buccaneers fired Tony Dungy? Tony Dungy was coming up short in the playoffs. He would lose either in the divisional round or the conference championship. And eventually the Bucs ownership said, you know what? We're going to fire Tony Dungy and we're going to trade for John Gruden. And do you know what the Buccaneers did their first season under John Gruden? They won the freaking Super Bowl. Sometimes it's not all about blowing a team up. It's not about rebuilding. Sometimes it's just about getting a new leader in there. Sometimes you just need a new change at head coach to get you over the hump. Every year we ask ourselves around this same time, what is it going to take for the Bills or the Ravens to get over the hump? And eventually you can only ask that question so many times until you start pointing at the head coach and saying, maybe he has to go. Maybe getting rid of him is what finally gets us over the hump. You can't be scared to gamble in life. Chances make champions. And sometimes you gotta roll the dice to win. Sometimes it works, sometimes it backfires. But how are you ever going to know if the gamble you're going to take works if you never roll that dice, though? How do the Bills know that they can't do better than Sean McDermott, or they can do better than Sean McDermott if they still continue to keep him around? Same thing with the Steelers and John Harbaugh. The NBA, with how aggressive they are at firing these coaches, I think the NFL owners should start doing the same thing. Because eventually, yeah, it's one thing to have these guys that have been with the organization for such a long time. But if you're not winning the Super Bowl, then ultimately you failed if you're coaching a team like the Ravens or the Bills, because that's what the expectation is every single year, and they still keep coming up short. You know, I don't really like the NBA that much. If it wasn't for sports betting, I wouldn't watch the NBA at all. But I always respect how, unlike NFL owners, NBA owners, they're not going to tolerate mediocrity. They're not going to tolerate consistently underperforming in the postseason every year with a team that has a good enough roster to win it all. And the NFL owners need to start taking this from the NBA. Stop being so patient with these head coaches when it comes to winning the Super Bowl, because when you're going up against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and you keep getting the same results, then that's the definition of insanity. Why not just, what if the Buffalo Bills would have fired Sean McDermott after last season and they hired Ben Johnson? What if the Bengals would have fired Zach Taylor and they hired Ben Johnson? We would be looking at these teams more differently than what we are now. Imagine if Lamar Jackson had Ben Johnson coaching them up. Do you not know how dangerous Lamar would be? I mean, eventually we get to a point when you can only tolerate the same thing year after year until you just have to make a change. And you can add as many players as what you want. You can draft as well as you can, but nothing's going to change until ultimately you change the head man. And sometimes that's what it takes to get over the hump. And in the NBA, hey, I know that a lot of people disagree with the frequency of these coaching fires, but I mean, a good amount of times they pay off. The Tennessee Titans are going to be a lot better than what they're expected to be. I've seen a bunch of rec predictions that have the Titans winning 6, 7, 8 games at the most. I have them going 9-8. 9-8 could be good enough to get the Titans the last seed in the NFL playoffs in the AFC. Last year, they had a really good defense, but unfortunately, Mayo Man and Mason Rudolph didn't really give their defense a lot of breaks due to how bad they were at quarterback. With the Titans now having Cam Ward at quarterback now, who should be just as good as what Jaden Daniels was during his rookie season, that defense is going to look much better than how they looked on the stat sheet last year. With the personnel that Cam Ward has around him on offense, he should be able to put up similar numbers to what Jaden Daniels was able to put up with the Commanders, if not better, because the Titans are a better situation than what Jaden Daniels walked into last year. Although you don't have a coach that's as proven as Dan Quinn, who has been to the Super Bowl before, you do have a good offensive line led by one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. You got a great group of wide receivers. Calvin Ridley is a dog. If we are talking about the top 5 most talented receivers in the game, I'm talking about most talented. I'm not talking about stats. I'm not talking about production. I'm just talking about in terms of the 5 most talented receivers in the game in terms of skill set. Calvin Ridley is in that discussion. Calvin Ridley is an all-pro caliber receiver, but he's been held back due to the Titans having bad quarterback play last year. Hell, up to this point in Calvin Ridley's career, he's 30 years old. He hasn't played with a good quarterback since Matt Ryan, who was on the tail end of his career. Matt Ryan was out of his prime. Cam Ward is already in his prime. Cam Ward, to me, is already a top 10 quarterback in the game. And now with him throwing to Calvin Ridley, he's going to become a household name again. A lot of you all forgot just how good Calvin Ridley is. Elite Ironmaner, a.k.a. the Travis Hunter Destroyer, should have a really good rookie season. You also have Xavier Restrepo, Cam Ward's tag team partner from the U, who is Miami's all-time leading receiver. He comes to Tennessee following Cam Ward. You know Cam Ward is going to make sure that he eats. The Titans have a good amount of depth in the receiver room. They got a really good tight end in Okonkwo. They got a solid running back in Tony Pollard. Tajay Spears got injured. But the personnel around Cam Ward is good enough for him to put up some really good numbers for him to be a rookie. I don't care about the amount of tough defenses that the Titans have to face. Oh, they faced the Denver Broncos in week 1. So what? And Cam Ward ain't scared of the Broncos defense. Cam Ward is an alpha. Cam Ward is one of those dudes that if you put an obstacle in his face, not only is he going to jump over it, he's going to absolutely kick it down brick by brick until there no longer is any of it left. As a Miami Hurricane fan, Cam Ward gave me my best years ever as Miami fan. For the first time in my 14 years being a fan of the Canes, I actually had hope and optimism that Miami could win the ACC, that Miami could compete for a national championship because of Cam Ward. Cam Ward is the definition of a franchise-changing quarterback. And in a division that is really weak right now, outside the Texans, the Titans don't have too much comp. The Jaguars, they more than likely are going to be a 7-8 win team. They'll be a competitive 7-8 win team, but I don't think they're as good talent-wise as what the Titans are. And I would take Cam Ward over Trevor Lawrence. The Colts suck. The Houston Texans, okay, they're the team to beat, but they have similar questions offensively to what the Titans have. On the offensive line, you have less questions than what the Texans have if you're the Titans. But when it comes to receiver, though, the Houston Texans, they don't really know who's going to be that number 2 behind Nico Collins. The Texans' offensive line also is a huge mystery. I mean, if that offensive line is as bad as what it was last year, then the Titans could win this division easily, regardless of how good C.J. Stroud is. Okay, C.J. Stroud's a top 10 quarterback. So is Cam Ward. So if the Texans' offensive line isn't improved, which I doubt it will be, Texans fans would disagree with me on this, but I mean, you haven't really drafted well on the offensive line. You're bringing in a bunch of free agents. You're having them compete and slug it out for the starting spots, but I don't think that offensive line is going to be as good as Tennessee's this year. You got one of the best offensive line coaches in the game. You have a really good defense. Now, the Texans have a big edge over the Titans defense, but the Titans defense is still good enough to win the weak AFC South. So I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw the Tennessee Titans make it to the playoffs. Every year, there's a team that we all expect to suck water through our garden holes, and they end up shocking us all. Last year, we had 3 of them. The Broncos, the Chargers, and the Commanders. All 3 of those teams made it to the playoffs. The Titans could be that sole team that takes the NFL by storm because of how good Cam Ward is. Odell Beckham was snapping on X about the speculation revolving around his retirement. He basically had a whole tirade saying how don't text him happy retirement. If it doesn't come from the horse's mouth, don't say anything about it. And it just had me thinking about Odell Beckham's career as a whole. Because at one point, Odell Beckham was on his way to a Hall of Fame career. He is the 3rd fastest receiver to get to 5,000 yards. He became a superstar with that incredible catch that he had on Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys, which pretty much made him go from just a football player to a pop culture icon. Because OBJ, his name is bigger than what his play on the field was. When you think about OBJ, you think good receiver if you're just talking to a casual fan of the sport. But if you are a diehard fan, then you would know that OBJ has had the darkest downfall in NFL history. Because at one point, OBJ was viewed to be a surefire Hall of Famer. We've never seen a receiver burst onto the scene and have the kind of dominance that OBJ had. His first 3 seasons, he had 1,300 yards or more. I mean, OBJ was a Hall of Fame talent who didn't have a Hall of Fame career. And you may think that that's stupid to say. How can you be a Hall of Fame talent and not be a Hall of Fame player? You can have the talent to be a Hall of Famer, but you can have things that derail your road that can. Rather that be injuries, character issues, which OBJ went through when he got traded from the Giants to the Browns. He had a clashing with Baker Mayfield. Remember that his father came out and he was taking shots at Baker Mayfield on Facebook. Then OBJ goes to the Rams where he gets traded to, and all of a sudden, his career starts to get back on track. The Rams make it to the Super Bowl against the Bengals. He's going off in the first quarter, catches a touchdown. He was on his way to having one of the best performances in Super Bowl history, but then he gets injured. And I remember when he got injured, my homie in college was having a Super Bowl watch party. It was bring your own everything, bring your own drinks. We had the guys rolled up, and it's like 30 of us packed in my homie's living room. And OBJ's going off. Everybody's celebrating. We're hyped up because OBJ was most of everybody's superhero, or OBJ was a lot of people's superheroes during their childhood. At least he was my superhero growing up as a Jet. I mean, don't act like when you were on the playground during recess that you weren't trying to make one-handed catches and screaming, Odell! OBJ was beloved by a lot of people, especially in my generation. So when OBJ got injured during this Super Bowl against the Bengals, he tore his ACL. I promise to you, the whole energy completely left the room. Everybody was just shocked and completely entrenched in sadness. Hell, I almost cried when OBJ got injured. You can say I'm soft all you want to, but OBJ, for the most part, was a guy that everybody wanted to see win. You saw the adversity that he had to overcome with several injuries, people attacking his character, people questioning if he still had the ability to be the same player that he was when he was dominating the NFL the first 3 years. So when you see him going off in the Super Bowl, you finally think OBJ is back. This is OBJ's message that he isn't washed, that he actually does have the ability to still be an elite receiver in this game, and it all gets taken away with one play, that being that injury, which was the epitome of OBJ's career. At his peak, he was really good, but he would have injuries that would derail him. Then when he came back, it kind of took him a little bit to get back on track. And then when he got on track, he'll have another injury, he'll have another setback. And OBJ's downfall in the NFL is just so sad and dark. Because for a nostalgic person like me, I don't know if you're a nostalgic person that always likes to reminisce on your childhood, but OBJ is what made me such a big fan of the NFL. I wanted to be like OBJ. A lot of people did. OBJ and Cam Newton were the two athletes that I looked up to the most. So to see OBJ's career in the way that it is about to, not being anywhere close to a Hall of Famer, despite being on a Hall of Fame trajectory at the start of his career, it's just incredibly sad and disappointing because this is a player that had the ability to be the all-time great or one of the all-time greats. And he ultimately won't be, not because of lack of talent, but just due to injuries, personal things that set him back. And his downfall, man, it's just really sad. I saw another tweet that was reposting when he got released by the Miami Dolphins last year that said that the NFL has already forgotten about OBJ. the NFL has already moved on. And I was just like, damn, man. OBJ was one of them ones. He really was. And it's just sad to see his career end after such a promising start.